So this video describes some of the protections that are available when you do trust-based planning. Okay, so there's a saying that says, I love my kids too much to give them money outright. Okay, so the idea here is if I give my kids, let's say 3 kids, and I give them assets equally, if I give it to them in trust, then there's some protections that go along with that. Okay, the first is asset protection. So what if I give it, and one of my children is in a marriage and the marriage is on the rocks, right? So I don't want to have a situation where I've given the money outright to that child, that money then somehow gets commingled, and then when my child gets divorced, my future ex-son or daughter-in-law is taking half of my inheritance. That's not going to be a good situation. So is there a way to prevent that? Yes, that's giving the money or their inheritance to my kids in a trust that will protect against a marriage that's on the rocks, that falls apart, so that if there was a divorce, the assets that my kids received in inheritance are protected. Okay, now what if my son is an entrepreneur and he goes through a situation where there's a bankruptcy? Now he is personally liable to these debtors. If I pass away, I don't want my inheritance to go to these people that are part of that business deal. I want this to be used for him and his family as part of our legacy. So I'm going to give it to him in a trust that allows bankruptcy protection. If my other child is in a lawsuit and there's a judgment against them, well, if I give it to them in this trust, again, the assets are protected from that judgment. So in a world that's becoming more litigious and where our legacies are more important, usually giving the assets to our kids in a protected way is preferable. There's greater peace of mind at each generation. Now another protection is this idea of bloodline protection. What if my child predeceases me? Now they may have a spouse, and that spouse may be wonderful, but if they've got kids, right, the kids trump the spouse, and I would want my child's share to go to the next generation, right? I want it to follow the bloodline down. I don't want it to go across to a spouse who might remarry and then take the assets a different way. So bloodline protection is an opportunity that we can add into our estate planning. There's another sort of planning we have called estate tax planning. Now, right now in Illinois, if you pass away and you've got over $4 million in your countable assets, then you're going to have to pay an estate tax. If your assets are less than $4 million, then there is no estate tax for you to pay. So with trust planning, we can do some nice estate tax planning to avoid the estate tax. Estate tax is definitely an optional tax in that we can plan around having to pay that or not. But you can only do it with planning in advance, not at the last minute. The other protection that we get with a trust-based plan is probate protection. Remember up here, because we have a question, who owns my stuff, I have to go to probate. Here, because I don't have that question of who owns it, we know the trust owns it, and we already have the instructions. We get to avoid probate. So in the space below, go ahead and indicate what protections you would like to have in your plan, whether it's will or trust-based. And based on those protections you want, that's going to dictate which one of these types of plans you're going to want and what sort of additional protections and aspects of the plan you're going to want to incorporate.